Welcome to The Explainer. Have you ever found yourself in that absolutely maddening situation where you are completely 100% innocent of something, but you still find yourself desperately trying to prove it to someone in charge? It's such an exhausting, kind of helpless feeling, right? Because you know your own mind, you know you didn't do anything wrong, but the person sitting across from you, whether that's a manager, a police officer, or some government official, they're just looking at you with total suspicion. Well, today, we're going to explore exactly why that massive gap exists between our own internal reality and the external judgment of institutions, and we'll see why, when you're dealing with authority, just being innocent simply isn't always enough to keep you out of trouble.
So there is this foundational rule of how institutions actually operate. Perception is important. You might be innocent, but if your perception is not innocent, there may be problems, particularly with governments and administration. Now, we really have to understand that this isn't just some cynical complaint about life being unfair. No, this is an actual fundamental premise that governs how institutions, governments, and administrative bodies function. It's literally what they're built on.
Okay, let's dive into this fundamental divide. On one side, you've got intention. Your intention is entirely internal. It's the unvarnished truth of what you know in your own mind. But on the other side, we have perception. And this is entirely external. It's strictly how your actions, completely stripped of all your inner thoughts, appear to everyone else. The core problem we face in society is that, well, we judge ourselves by our internal intentions, but the rest of the world, and especially institutional authorities, can only judge us by our external perception. I mean, they can't read your mind, right?
Part 1. The appearance of impropriety.
To really grasp why bureaucracies and authorities care so deeply about these optics, we need to look at the underlying philosophies that actually govern them. It goes way beyond just playing it safe. And this brings us to a massively important concept in public administration, the appearance of impropriety. This is a doctrine that requires professionals to avoid literally any situation that would lead a reasonable person to question their integrity, even if absolutely no actual misconduct occurred. This is a core law of public administration. You see, citizens' trust in their government and public institutions relies entirely on ethical appearances. Research constantly shows that negative public perceptions can completely destroy confidence in government, even when everybody is technically acting by the book.
And what's really fascinating here is that this isn't just some unwritten rule, it is formally codified. The American Bar Association, which is one of the highest ethical bodies in the legal world, explicitly states this in their commentary on judicial ethics. They recognize that conduct creating the appearance of impropriety is just as destructive to public confidence as actual improper conduct. Think about it. If the public thinks the system is rigged or corrupt, the system completely loses its legitimacy, completely regardless of what the hidden truth might be.
And courts have taken this to some seriously astonishing lengths. Just look at this striking ruling from the Supreme Court of New Jersey. They declared that sometimes an attorney who is guiltless in any actual sense must still stand aside. Why? For the sake of public confidence. Just let that sink in for a second. To maintain the trust of the public, the system sometimes dictates that your actual innocence must take a back seat to how your conduct is perceived. The survival of the institution's reputation is prioritized over your pure intentions.
Part 2. Assessing institutional risk. So, we've looked at the philosophy, but how does this all play out on the ground? Let's shift our perspective for a minute and put you directly in the shoes of police officers, financial regulators, and public administrators. Because these officials cannot read minds, they're forced to evaluate risk and enforce laws based entirely on observable metrics. First, they're going to look at objective evidence. Then they look at your documented actions. They check your strict compliance with rules and regulations. And finally, they ask how a reasonable observer would interpret the circumstances. If you have an unusual pattern of conduct, well, it justifies their scrutiny. They aren't necessarily calling you a liar. They are simply following the only evaluation process they actually have available to them.
The entire mindset of an investigator basically boils down to one simple rhetorical question. Would a reasonable person find this suspicious? When a regulator or an auditor looks at your file, they're not allowed to assume you have good intentions. Actually, scratch that. It's literally their job to be skeptical. They must evaluate the available evidence and ask if a totally neutral outsider would raise an eyebrow.
Moving on to Part 3. Real-world scenarios.
Let's ground these high-level theories into some rapid-fire, highly relatable everyday scenarios. Because honestly, this happens all around us, every single day, often by pure accident. Imagine you're in a large, kind of confusing government building. You take a wrong turn, push through a door, and boom, suddenly you're in a restricted office. Your internal intention? You were just getting lost. It's a completely innocent mistake. But how does the security guard perceive this observable fact?
To them, this looks exactly like an unauthorized attempt to access a restricted area. And because of their mandate to protect public safety, they absolutely must investigate it as a security breach. Your innocence doesn't magically stop the alarm from ringing.
And this brilliantly illustrates how this plays out across different sectors of our lives. Let's walk through 3 specific, quick scenarios. First up, social media. You post a sarcastic joke. Your intention is humor, even if it's a really terrible joke. But the public perception is that it's offensive, or maybe even an actual threat. The consequences you face are going to be based on the public's reasonable interpretation, not your hidden punchline. Look at banking. You run a legitimate cash business and make several unusually large deposits. Your intention is entirely legitimate, but to a bank's automated compliance system, that pattern creates the immediate perception of money laundering. They are legally required to stop and ask for documentation to verify the transaction. Or consider government procurement. An employee awards a contract to a relative's company because, well, they genuinely offer the absolute best value. Their intention is efficiency and savings. But the perception, it absolutely screams favoritism and nepotism, which instantly undermines public confidence. In every single one of these cases, innocent actions trigger completely justified institutional scrutiny.
Finally, Part 4. Protecting your reputation.
Now that we understand exactly how the system is wired to look at us, how do we actually navigate this reality? How do we protect ourselves when just being innocent clearly isn't enough? Well, the absolutely crucial point is this. Acting lawfully is only step 1. To truly protect yourself in public life and business, you have to proactively manage how your actions are perceived. You must actively avoid situations that even look improper. Maintain radical transparency. Document your decisions meticulously. Because, if it isn't documented, to an auditor, it just didn't happen. Communicate your reasoning clearly and comply with all rules, even if you think you've done nothing wrong in spirit. You literally have to build a paper trail that proves your innocence to a reasonable outsider. So, it really all comes down to a shift in perspective. The next time you're making a sensitive decision, filing a report, or interacting with any kind of bureaucracy, I want you to step outside of yourself. Don't just rely on your own moral compass. Ask yourself, you know your intentions are good, for sure. But what does the observable evidence say? If a total stranger were to look at your actions today, completely stripped of your thoughts and feelings, what story would the observable facts tell them? Make sure the evidence speaks just as clearly as your conscience.